Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. A big warm welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. We are your home, away from home, where we provide world-class global education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. And we have just crossed over 909,000 views so far for this year, which is very exciting because last year, for the whole year, we were just over 1 million, and now we've got 4 months left, September, October, November, December. So please do subscribe to our channel. Our show today is the Listening Mentor Show, and this is a show where we celebrate elevated listening, learning to listen without judgment, without interruption, without providing a solution, without stage hogging. I'm the host of the show, and the star of our show is Caroline Heward. Caroline is known as the Harley Street Stress Expert. She is in the United Kingdom, and she helps people bust their stress. Today's topic is building resistance in high-pressure situations. Let's welcome our in-house therapist, Caroline Heward. Hello.
Woo-hoo. Always lovely to be here, especially on this particular show, Dr. Jacalyn. We always have interesting and very, very highly insightful conversations, don't we?
Yes, we do, for sure. And this is a great topic. Thank you for coming up with it. A lot of people across the world are in high pressure situations. And then we also put ourselves in high pressure situations, basically on how we respond to certain things. So let's talk a little bit about your work that you do as a therapist and how you help people.
Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn. I help people break through the patterns that create their everyday stress. So whether you find that when you are feeling stressed, it comes out physically, aches and pains, or whether it's emotional, sadness, anger, loneliness, or whether it's what you're complaining about, a relationship, family situation, a bereavement, or whether you feel it from a mental space, anxiety, depression, and stress. So however it affects you, this is how you are reacting to situations and experiences that are difficult. And I help you identify the root cause of what happens that creates that stress. What is it that you're not dealing with? What emotion are you holding back? And I identify the root cause using root cause therapy and chakra psychology. I've been doing this work since 2000. That's over 2 decades. And it's very simple. It's a very quick process, and it leaves you feeling deeply relaxed, much, much calmer in the mind, and it gives you an incredible sleep.
Oh, we all need that. That's for sure. My sleep was interrupted last night. It's kind of funny. We have a grandfather clock, and we haven't used it in years. And I had a worker come over to do something in the house, and all of a sudden the clock started chiming. And I was like, "Did you fix the clock?" And he said, "I don't know. I just moved it." And so it was chiming all night.
Oh gosh, I love the idea of a grandfather clock, but then this chiming every hour, I think it would wake me up.
Well, actually every 15 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
But anyways, so that could be a high pressure situation depending on how you show up for it, or you can just stop the pendulum from going back and forth, which is I did at 7 a.m. So when we think about pressure and how we deal with it, obviously everyone deals with pressure differently. And some people have worked for years to get some skill sets, some tools so that they can handle it. But there are definitely times when it still catches us off guard. You and I are both professionals, and that doesn't mean that we have some superhuman power that we don't get distracted or upset. So, in terms of building resilience, the one thing that comes up for me is, and I don't know if this is because Mercury's in retrograde, but I am finding on a regular basis that people are constantly giving me their opinion about something I should do. You should do this and you should do that. And we know about the word should. And that I feel pressure when that happens. I'm just speaking personally. How about you when you're getting unsolicited advice about what you should do?
I never say should. And I'm very resistant on the word should. If somebody tells me I should do something, I have an immediate rebuttal saying that it's when you say should or must or have to, then you go into this defense mode and you go into this state of resistance. It's just those words that the body doesn't like them. It doesn't want to feel that it has to do something. So I would use the word, my invitation is, and then detail the invitation, or I recommend that you have a look at this. If somebody says should, I just feel that it's probably something to do with where they're at rather than where I'm at, because they are probably shoulding and musting for themselves, which is why they are iterating that to me. And it's more a reflection of what's going on and how they enact in their world rather than it is for you. Now, if you are reacting to it or it's triggering you, it's important to notice what it is about that's triggering you and handle that response internally, because we're all here being the best that we can be from the place of our own knowledge and experience. And we're not all experienced coaches and therapists and experts in language and communication. So sometimes when people say, I must do this, I must do that, there's like an intensity for them to do something rather than anything to do with you.
Amen to that, sister. I definitely agree with you there. And I think also, especially when people are adamant about you should do this and they say it over and they're getting themselves all worked up, I think to myself, what is coming up for you that you feel so adamant that you have to give me your opinion about something? And so I typically will not react, but at some point I do get annoyed because I'm going to have to ask you once again to keep your opinions to yourself. And people don't like that. People get offended when you say, basically, I feel confident within myself to make a decision. And I know that you mean well. I think you mean well, but can you please keep your opinion to yourself?
You could use a very a coach's thing that coaches says, thank you for sharing, and leave it there.
I thought you told me that you don't like that. That's a dismissal.
That's what I mean. To the person that isn't in that space of knowing that and not educated in that area, that you leave it there. You say, thank you for sharing. And then it's sort of, you've thanked them as far as they're concerned, and they can kind of shut up because you've thanked them.
I do like that. That's very direct. And what are they going to say after that? They might say, oh, you're shushing me or you're shutting me down. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for sharing is like, oh, great. And that hasn't given them any inkling that you're not taking it on board. You've just literally said to them, thank you for sharing.
Yes.
Or if you want to be a little bit more, you can say, I appreciate you sharing your perspective on this.
Yes, that's a good one too. I like it. So if we think of people, I'm just going to use job titles, for example, someone running a major global organization, someone who is ruling a country or part of a government, those positions could be seen as very high power, high pressure. Someone who's traveling around the world for their job, constantly on planes. But in an everyday life where someone, maybe it's a homemaker, someone working from home, they may have a zillion things they have to get done, plus they have to keep their family happy, keep themselves happy. That could be a high pressure situation. So I just want to illuminate the fact that we're not really cutting anyone out from being in a high pressure situation. So I would think, and I'm going to defer to you, that one of the first steps is to identify and realize that you are in a high pressure situation.
Yes, absolutely right. Because sometimes we're caught in that high pressure situation. And if we don't acknowledge it, then we can defer what we do, which causes more stress and more importance and urgency in the situation. So sometimes, and in the corporate box, it can be, I don't know whether you've seen this before, it can be urgent and important, urgent, not important, and then urgent and can be not important and not urgent. I think that's the matrix. And so it's important to have the awareness when you step into that space of the situation that it is urgent and important, and then you can take decisions from that perspective and from that space, because we do put off things that are not urgent but important. And one of the things that I do is I put off my accounts, sorting out my bookkeeping for my accountant, until it becomes very urgent and very important and like right up against the legal deadlines. And then he's like haranguing me. And that gets me really stressed because I have to work against the clock. And I do it to myself all the time. And so that's put me in a very high pressurized situation where I have to drop everything. Whereas if I just did a little bit each time, it wouldn't become urgent and important.
That's a good point. And thank you for your openness in sharing that. That's lovely. What I found is the older I get, I'm very good with time management and allocating time for the various things that I have to do. But where I find I have an issue is when the things that I don't have control over come up, and I hadn't planned to deal with X, Y, and Z. It wasn't in the schedule. And so for a person like me who's very black and white, I've had to learn how to be in the gray, because things are always going to come up and you have to deal with people. Humans are very difficult to deal with in a lot of ways. So what would you say to someone who, for example, is part of a very large family and everybody's together? During the pandemic, people moved in together, right? They're sharing small spaces, and that in and of itself can be stressful.
Well, it's important to be respectful of each other's, I'm going to call it idiosyncrasies, and their own little things that they do, and also important to manage your own expectations on what you would be able to do normally versus what you are able to do within that confined situation. And I feel that it's about reading the situation, because what might seem very easy for you just to be yourself, when you are yourself without respecting other people and what's going on for them, could potentially cause a much more highly dramatic response and triggering situation in terms of people being together in that kind of confined space. And this is what happened when the world shut down and families got together and people were working from home. This did cause a lot of challenges for children that were doing their schoolwork from home, and mother and father that were working from home, and there was only one or two computers, laptops, and everybody wanted to be on at the same time. So it is about managing and understanding what each person needs. And this does require some empathy and some conversation, because some people can be quiet and not say. And there is always members of families that won't say what they need, because they're there for everybody else. And so it's really vital that everybody has an opportunity to come from a place of what they need versus what they're willing to put up with.
Food for thought there. That makes a lot of sense. And when you have a person has a high pressure situation at home, and then they leave and they go to the workplace, for example, many times we bring that with us. And I know for you and for me, we have to be spot on. We have to be totally focused, and whatever else is going on, we have to put aside. But sometimes people don't have that liberty, and they might go from a stressful home to a stressful commute into the office where there's more pressure, and it might feel like a buildup of constant pressure, constant pressure, constant pressure. So do you have to be a whiz at handling pressure? Do you have to be like a seasoned expert? What if you're just a regular person who doesn't have training, and you're going from one thing to the next, and it's all stressful to you?
Well, this is what happens, because we're human. And that scenario that you've just described, Dr. Jacalyn, it reminds me of the cartoons where something happens in the cartoons. And I used to watch when I was young, Tom and Jerry. I don't know whether you've ever seen that. It's about a
Yes.
cat. Yeah, you have. Great. And Tom, the cat, gets very, very steamed up, and he's trying to do something, trying to catch Jerry the mouse. And he works elaborately on these contraptions. And then Jerry looks at him and looks at what he's doing, and then he whizzes off and escapes the trap that Tom has set. And that makes Tom, the cat, really angry. And what you see is like steam coming out of his ears. And then by the end of each show, that Tom is actually really, really steamed up and is like a pressure cooker about to burst. And that's what you've just described reminds me of, that's what it looks like, when we look at it from a cartoonic perspective. And we are all human, and this is our threshold. This is like sort of looking at the iceberg. There's a lot underneath the ocean, and it's only the bit that's at the top that people see, and they don't see what's underneath, where the iceberg is, and how much you're trying to control it. And the resilience part is how much above the line of the ocean is that resilience and that stress that you are having to handle. And many people don't know. And it is about understanding what your triggers are, understanding how far you can actually feel that you can be pushed into a situation or an area, and what you will stop, where you will stop. And this is where I've actually heard people turn around and say that around them, people comment, especially if somebody's had a heart attack, that they could see it coming. And the person, when they've had the heart attack, says, yeah, I could see that one was coming. I was waiting for it. And it's just that they don't know when to make the off switch off. They don't know how to turn the off switch. And this is about understanding what your coping mechanisms are and how far you can actually cope before you have to switch off. And this is where some people will have a migraine. That's their switch off point. Or they'll have to go to bed with the lights turned down and the curtains drawn. Or they might feel faint, or they might not eat, they might not feel hungry. But there's always like a trigger that they do to take time out. And this is the body's natural resilience. And I would invite you to, before you get to that natural switch off, like having a migraine, to stop, is to recognize when you're over the threshold and right up against what you can cope with.
I agree with that totally. And I also think it's important when you know you're under stress and certain people are your trigger, so to speak, maybe take a pause. If you see them calling you or they're coming into your office, just say, I'm about to get into a meeting, or can I check back with you? Or I will check back with you later today, instead of just taking yourself in that state of unrest and putting yourself into another stressful situation.
I totally agree. Sometimes if somebody's calling and I know they need a lot of my time, I will look at who's calling if the phone's right next to me, and say, I'll call them back, when I've got more time. So I make a judgment on that, especially if I'm just like preparing for a show, for instance, and I've like got 20 minutes and I'm against the clock getting my tech ready and putting my makeup on and making sure my hair's right. I don't want to be taking a call or dealing with a message at that time. And the other person doesn't know what situation you're in. They're not mind reading. They have got no idea. And if you've picked up the call, or if you respond to them as you're saying, I'm sorry, I don't really have time, I've got a show to prepare for, then you've made that person anxious by you responding when you didn't really have the physicality of time to respond. So it is about understanding what your boundaries are and what your needs are, and responding to that person when you have the time. Now, it might not be the right time for them. Then you can actually have conversation, a message conversation, to agree a time that's working for you and for the other person.
That's where I think the challenge comes in, because if you are someone who's awakened, or you are someone who is educated in these areas, the other person may not be, and they don't get it. We've talked about this many times, and you and I have been witness to people during the course that we were teaching, and they were not really on board with it. So that also can cause pressure, because one person is working on themselves, the other is at a different level. There's no judgment of where they are, but instilling these elevated listening skills to someone else is very difficult if they're not open to it. And so they may walk away very stressed out and angry at us, but we don't have to take that on.
No, that's absolutely, that I was going to say that's absolutely the point, that it's not important for us to take on their stuff. It is important to look after our own boundaries and what works for us, and to also be there for the other person. It has to be within a time frame and a boundary that works for you as well. You can be everything to that person. I can be everything to that person after 9 o'clock, after I've done the show, I've cleaned up, had a shower, and I've had something to eat. That's my timing. I'm free at 9 o'clock, and then I've got all the time in the world. But before that, I've got my show to prepare for. I'm doing my show, and then I have something to eat. I prepare some food, I eat, have my shower, and then I'm relaxed and can take the call. And I build that time in. I always say I'm free anytime after 9 p.m. Please feel free to call me. And that might not work for them, and at the same time, when you are taking care of you, when you make sure that your boundaries are adhered to, it's somehow energetically, and I can't explain this because it's a bit woo and even more woo, that what happens is the other person will naturally fall in, or they will arrange another time that works for them, that falls in with you. It's like an energetic, a frequency thing, and it'll be a vibration that you're emanating that they will pick up on. But it is about you being very firm in your boundaries. If you're not firm in your boundaries, then they'll just walk all over it, and they will push to get you, and they will push to make that conversation. And it's important for you to be strong in your boundary, because if your boundary is all over the place, then they can just walk in and then you won't be very happy.
Happiness is not a word I'm thinking of in that case. So one other thing I want to share and get your insights on, I found myself that when I'm in a situation like this, the older I get, I'm starting to distance myself. So my boundary is, I've shared with you, this is how I feel, these are my boundaries, and you're continuously coming over them. So I'm going to retreat. I'm not hiding. I just choose not to engage. I don't want to go there.
That's perfectly right. Rather than tell them, actions speak louder than words. And I love the fact that you said disengage, because the disengagement, they will feel your energy is disengaged. And so they will reach out at the right time after assimilating the conversations that you've had. But disengagement is not about saying, I'm not going to speak to them and being really, really gossipy. The disengagement is not being available anymore, not allowing that person to become intrusive in your space. And that's the disengagement, without any pressure or any gossip or any ill will to the other person. Putting yourself into the shoes of feeling very, very comfortable in your boundaries, and they can come in when it's the right time and it feels right for you or not. But disengagement is a really, really good way, which can be silent. It doesn't need you to say anything, because they will feel that you're not there.
Where are you? We know you're not here. I think that's also a good catalyst for people to have some self-reflection, because if you're constantly going at it with someone, you're under pressure, I'm under pressure, and you're butting heads, nobody really has a time to think about what is underneath all of this, what is my role in it. So when you take a step back and you are silent, then that gives a good time for reflection. Now, something I want to add to that and have you chat about as a therapist, I was in a relationship with someone and they would routinely not talk to me. I would be standing there and I would ask questions and they literally wouldn't talk to me for days. It's almost like the, what is it you have there? The changing of the guard, and there's no facial. He would do it to me on a regular basis. And I really felt like that was manipulation, but that's judgment. So how would you describe it, therapist?
Yeah, we in England we call it sending the person to Coventry. Don't ask me how that term came up, because I was living in Birmingham in England, and when I heard that expression, Coventry was quite far away. It was the next big town. So I don't know whether that's where it came from, but even in London, they would say sending the person to Coventry. And essentially, it's about sending the person to a faraway place that they don't connect with you. And nowadays, I believe that it's called ghosting. And we've both talked about this ghosting thing, that somebody's very much there and then they ghost you. And it's not, I believe, generally anything that you've done. There's something going on in their world and they've gone quiet on you. And I've reached out to a couple of people that were very keen to book sessions with me, really, really keen, months ago, 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago. And I reached out over the bank holiday weekend and just mentioned, said hi, just reminding you, I know that time can make, things can be busy, and just reminding you that you seem very keen to book in some sessions, and reminding you of when would you like to make a booking. And there was 2 people that came back pretty quickly and said, I'm completely broke. There's no money, and it's now looking at the end of the year. And I just thought that was just absolutely cool that they came back and gave a really honest answer that they didn't have the money to book in. And that made perfect sense. I didn't feel, oh gosh, what have I done? I didn't do something right. It's because something's going on in their world and they don't have the available funds. Or it could be for some people that they don't have the time, or there's something going on that they're trying to work out. Many men, in particular, the masculine energy will retreat if they're trying to work on something. If there's a problem that they're working on, they tend to go what's called audio digital, and they'll analyze it internally to work out the solution. So their mind is very busy. Externally, they look very quiet. But internally, there's tons going on. There's tons of conversation, and they don't even realize they've become silent.
Silent night. Yes. Excellent points. And I'm thinking with people who are in a situation like that, how would you frame it up if you need some quiet time? Caroline, I appreciate what you shared with me today. I need to take some time and reflect on it. So I just want to let you know that I'm not ignoring you, but I appreciate you. And so I want to think this through. I'll be back in touch with you in about a week.
Some people are really good and they say stuff like that, and that's great, and sometimes I'll think about it is really a brush off for saying thank you, but no thank you. so
Yeah.
so it depends on the tonality. If somebody says, give me some time, I need to think about this, it depends on the tonality. I can hear when somebody's just fobbing me off and saying, thank you very much, but no thanks, because I can hear the unspoken words. And sometimes I call them out on it and say, does that mean that the price is too much, or you're just not interested? And then they turn around and say that the price isn't right for them, or they don't have the time or the distance, so they will give me a response because I call them out and they're not expecting it. It's amazing when you ask an honest question, how much people will give you as an honest response because they're not expecting you to ask them. So I would give them the opportunity to say what is right for them, and then make a judgment, because sometimes it just might be not the right time, or it might be that they need to sort out more funds, or it might be there's something going on that they need to sort before they come back to you.
You nailed it on the head. That's brilliant. It's something else is going on. And I'll give an example. When I was in corporate, I had numerous meetings with people in this particular global company. You would know all about it. We actually talked about some of their stuff yesterday in one of our shows. And we were going to present something and they went totally dark, and we had spent all this time and money putting together this presentation. So finally, through another person who worked there, we ended up getting a meeting with the executive, and we were ready to present based on everything that we knew. And something had changed within the organization. Their priorities had completely changed. And the reason why they claimed they didn't get back to us was they were restructuring and didn't have information to share because it was confidential. So we were really appreciative that they gave that information at the time. But I did think to myself, out of professional courtesy and respect, couldn't you have 2 months ago come back with something that would let us know we were still having an opportunity? It's going to be a completely different opportunity. You don't have to say that, but don't do the ghosting, because I think that leaves people feeling a lot of negative emotions, and we actually have to play detective. It's like when you're in a relationship with someone and they just disappear. You're like, should I call the hospital? Should I, like, why do we have to play detective? Just give us some information.
This is a really very fascinating subject, Dr. Jacalyn, because I've been speaking to a lot of people that are millennials and Zoomers, so the ones that have just left school between 18 and 21, and people that are in their 40s and 30s. And what I'm hearing is that this going silent is their natural, and they don't even consider that it's a problem. It's us, the older generation, that consider it a problem, because we were very much the communicators. Because there is so much media and so much interaction in terms of messages, and it's at them at all aspects. And I did read an article very recently that there's an expectation when people are working that if they're sent a message like at 10 o'clock or midnight or after working time, that they should respond. And if they don't respond, why not? And it's a negative. Whereas when I was working and growing up and in different roles, I didn't have that, because we didn't have the mobile. And I set up my company 20 years, just over 20 years ago. And so this experience of always being available wasn't there in the same way that it is today. And I would say that there is so much expectation of quick response that they're overwhelmed and they can't get back to everybody. And I didn't appreciate this until I had these conversations, because I'm interested to understand why they don't. And they don't because there's so much else that they're doing, and they don't think. If they go silent, they've already had that internal conversation, which you're not privileged to. And that is the problem with the social etiquette and the social communication, interpersonal skills between the boomer generation, so the older generations, and the new generations that are in the workplace today.
And your information, what you just shared, is spot on. It's brilliant as always. Question for you: how many generations are there now? Are there 6? Are there still 5?
Oh, I'm not. There's the silent generation. I'm going to do this by sort of remembering. So that's before us, the war time. So that'd be my mum. Then there's
We call that traditional.
Sorry?
We call traditional generation.
Ah, right. We call it the silent generation. I think it depends on which demographic which thing that you're using, because there's lots of different ones. But there's one like pre-war, which, you know, sort of just around about the time of the war, which is we call the silent generation. And then the next one is the boomer generation, that goes right up until 1964. So I was born in 64. So I was the last of the boomers. And then the next generation is Generation X. So they were born 65 through to, and I can't quite remember when it was. And then after Generation X, there's the millennials. And they were, I'm not quite sure about the year on that one offhand. And then after the millennials, there's the Zoomers. So I think you're right. I think there's 5, but don't quote me on it. That's completely from memory.
That was very good. Congratulations. I actually had to do a presentation on the generations. This is a long time ago, 10 or 12 years ago, I think. But now we have to do a closing because we're actually at the end of our show already. It's just flown by. So, Caroline, please let our audience know the shows that you're on here, and then also how people can reach you to have you work your magic to help them bust their stress.
Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn. So I'm on A Woman's Prerogative, which is on every Monday at 7 p.m. British Summer Time and 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And also later on in the year, we usually do a 9 p.m. British Summer Time show. I'm not quite sure where that particular show is at the moment. On a Tuesday, I alternately do The Listening Mentor, which is this show with the wonderful Dr. Jacalyn, which, as you can see, is very insightful. And I'm here literally with no script, only the topic, and not knowing what the questions are, which makes our conversations really, really insightful and very interesting, because I don't know what's going to come up, and neither does Dr. Jacalyn. And then I also do, on the alternate Tuesday, a show which is called Talking Heads. So I'm a Talking Heads expert, and that's my own show, which is 40 minutes. And that's looking at all types of issues that create stress. So whether it's physical, emotional, mental, behavioral, whether it's relationship issues, whether it's bereavement, retirement issues, anger management, things like ADHD, things like narcissism in relationships. It covers a whole gamut of interesting things, wonderful, interesting things that we're complaining about or didn't realize that was a subject or that was a topic that we can unpick to help you have an awareness. And I'm always looking at root causes, and awareness is the first step that I take. When you are in awareness of a situation, a circumstance, a response, or a response mechanism or a trigger, in that space of awareness, that's the first step to solving the problems. And that's how I help you. And I can help you bust your stress if you reach out to me on nomorestress@live.co.uk. That's by email. Or call me if you're international, +44. If you're local, 07523 120 189. And I look forward to helping you bust your stress.
Bust it up, baby. There it is. Thank you so much for another fabulous show. We look forward to seeing you next week with Talking Heads.
Yes,
and
I'll be here.
We'll be back on Monday for a Woman's Prerogative, and we may have some new people with us. We'll see. All right, everyone. Thanks for being with us. Please do subscribe to our channels. Also, we do have some exciting news, if I can find it here, that we've crossed over 909,157 views, which I said before we're going to go. I don't know where we're going to go, but somebody's taking us there, and that's just on our one channel. So
it's exciting.
Thanks, everyone. All right, my dear friend, goodbye for now, and bye to everyone else. We'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.